Hi, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. In today's video, we're looking at this. This is a 2-rock Bloomfield drive. Now, this is a really, really expensive amp. And let me just explain quickly why I've got this amp, because normally I wouldn't sort of spend this sort of money on an amp, even though I did buy it secondhand. At the moment, we're creating a bunch of captures for IK Multimedia's Tonex and making them available on our website. What I'm doing is buying and selling amps so we can do the captures. And then after the captures, I can decide whether I want to keep this amp. Now, as I said, this amp is incredibly expensive. I think they retail, this isn't a new one, but they retail for about £5,300. So on the top end of boutique amplifiers. So in this video, and I'm going to let you guys decide this, I'm going to play through a bunch of different tones and you guys can decide whether it is actually worth its exorbitant price tag. So this amp has 4 6L6 tubes. It's 100 watt, switchable down to 50 watts. So what it does is when you switch it down to 50 watt, it only uses 2 of the output valves. There's a bunch of glass in the back, so God knows what it's going to cost to actually revalve the whole amp. But hopefully, if I decide to keep it, these valves will last a good while. So what is this amp? This amp is sort of Fender based, or Dumbley sort of based, I guess you could say, but it's 2Rock's take on that style of amplifier. So it's definitely got the Fender flavors and it's definitely got the more sort of drive sounds that you can get out of a Dumble clone or a Dumble style amplifier. And if I'm completely honest, it's not the easiest amp to play through and you definitely have to work at it. When this amp first turned up last week, I was going through the sounds, trying to get a sound that I liked out of it. And to be honest, it took about an hour, I would say, when normally I could just go up to an amplifier and go, yeah, it needs a bit more bass, it needs a bit more treble, a bit more gain, and then you're set. With this, because there's so many switches on it and the switches do so much, that it does take quite a while for you to find your sound. So let's go through some of the sounds that are just in the amplifier, and then I'm going to add some pedals and we can see what we can do with it that way. So everything you've heard so far is with the EQ in bypass. If I switch the EQ back in, it's going to reduce the gain a bit. It's going to sound like this. to me, that's about the best clean sound that I think I've ever heard out of an amplifier. I used to own a 2-Rock CRS, which is the classic reverb signature, I think it's called, which is definitely more of that Fender sort of flavour. It doesn't do gain as much as this. This is definitely not a high gain amp, as I'll demonstrate later on. And I didn't really like the classic reverb signature because it was a little bit too clean. When you added pedals to it, I don't think it took pedals that well, or the way that I use pedals, it doesn't take them that well. I know loads of fantastic guitar players use the classic reverb signature and they get amazing sounds out of it. People like Mick from That Pedal Show and many others get great sounds out of it. But for me, the sort of sounds that I like, I couldn't really get out of that amp. I can definitely get them out of this amp. The first button on the left-hand side is an EQ mode. We can switch between EQ1 and EQ2. Personally, I don't know why you'd ever switch up to EQ1, possibly if I was using humbuckers, but here's EQ1. Maybe for ultra clean stuff. When you switch it down to EQ2, which is the sound that I think I'd always keep it on, it really gets big and bold. Next, you've got a bright switch. Now I'm using a Strat, which is obviously quite a bright sounding guitar. Personally, I like it with the bright switch engaged. It definitely sounds more open to me. Next, you've got a mid boost. If I take it out, now we're really getting into those sort of Fender tones. So definitely more scooped. The next switch across is a deep switch, and personally I like it off. So I guess if you've got a real thin sounding guitar, that's really useful, but even for a Strat, I personally prefer it out. And again, it feels more open when it's out. The next switch is a bypass switch. This bypasses the EQ circuit, and this is great if you want like a bit of a lead boost. Now personally I love that because I'm starting to get more of a breakup sort of tone. And next you've got the lead switch. Now this switch is in, you could call it the lead channel, but as it's a cascading amp, what that means is different gain stages are then connecting together, and it's basically a one channel amp, but you're creating a boost with this lead switch. Now, as I said earlier, this amp isn't that forgiving. It's incredibly dynamic, so you can really take it from more sort of subtle lead tones to fairly driven. Now that's with the lead gain up about 1 o'clock, so let's turn the lead gain up. So it can get quite driven. Now, it's definitely not a high gain amp by any means, but you can definitely get a lot out of this amp. Now, I'm not going to demonstrate all of the controls on the front because I've got it set up really for how I like it. And again, it is one of those amps that you really do have to get to know, and you have to play with the controls quite a bit to get the sort of sound you want. But it is an absolutely fantastic sounding amp. And once you persevere with it and you get the sort of sound you want, it is a joy to play. Let's try it with a couple of pedals. Also on my pedal board, I've got a King Tone Dualist, which is a blues breaker and a tube screamer. Now, if I switch that in, I've got both the pedals engaged. This is going to be more of a, well, it's going to be a much more high gain sort of tone. Now, one of the things that is fantastic about this amp, even though I've got a ton of gain going into that, the amp is quiet. With a lot of other amps, you tend to get a lot of background noise, especially as you add the gain in. And even with a ton of gain added, it's whisper quiet. So there you go. Now I'm going to leave it to you guys to comment whether you think it's worth the money. Personally, it is an absolutely fantastic sounding amp. Yes, it is a hell of a lot of money, and I couldn't afford to buy one of these new, but it is slowly becoming my favorite amp, even to the point where I'm thinking of keeping this and selling my match list because I absolutely love this, and it is incredibly versatile. It's got a fantastic sounding reverb, and it is just a bit of a dream amp. So if any of you have a IK Multimedia Tonex pedal, or you use the Tonex software, you can download all of the captures that I've done with this amplifier, including a bunch of different pedals, on our website. Anyway, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. I really hope you guys got something out of it. If you did get something out of it, don't forget to like and subscribe, click on the bell button, and you'll be notified of any future video that comes out from the Studio Rats. I'm Paul, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.